Good evening. This is actually take 2 of my very first podcast, and it is because it says use headphones. I used headphones. I produced everything I wanted to say, said everything I wanted to say, played it back, very, very tinny, did not work, could hardly hear myself, which was a shame because actually for a first go on this it was pretty good. So I have been wanting to make a podcast for about a year, and about 3 weeks ago I set it up on Podbean, and then I thought, right, I need to get organised. I need to make a list of everything I want to talk about, because sometimes in sessions I will say things and I go, it's like floating above my body. I go, look down at myself and go, oh, that sounds quite good. I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I should share that with other people. And I do. I post things on my page. But the one thing I don't really like doing is like live videos. It's not really me. I don't want to look at myself. I don't think anybody else wants to really look at me. But I am good at voice notes. So this works quite well. I've been known to leave, I think my maximum is like a 15-minute all-in-one-go voice note, which my friends call podcasts. The only thing I have a slight reservation over is the fact that, and it's going to happen now because I'm going to say the word, is I yawn a lot and I sneeze a lot, and they tend to happen on these little voice notes I send friends. So we'll see how we go. So I didn't know when I was going to set this first episode up until today. It just came to me. I have been doing an EBSA training course, and it is 3 drawing and talking, and it's just listening back to a part 1 of a lovely lady, I'll tell you her name in a minute when I get to it, talking all about EBSA. And there's a part 2, and there'll be a part 3 available for me to watch. I think it's the 11th of February. So everything I'm learning, I'm going to share on here, because it's really opened up my eyes. There's lots of things I know about EBSA, but this in particular breaks a lot of things down, and it's really, really helpful. So hopefully, some of this might be helpful to you as a parent. It might be things you already know, but there may be some things there that you can take away from it. So hopefully it can help somebody, or, some of you. So I haven't finished listening to part 1 yet, but I'm just too excited. So I'm just going to start, really. One of the first things we talked about was what some of the reasons are that children have EBSA. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, EBSA is emotional-based school avoidance. So this is not an extensive list, but this is just the people that are on the call. They were putting in the chat some of the things they've seen, some of the things they've noticed. And then the speaker was talking about her experience when she was at school and coming up with some things. So this is what we have on our list, and I'm sure there'll be lots that you can add to this. So, reasons for not wanting to attend school. Lockdown. That was one of the factors that come up, because, of course, the government are saying, 6 years ago, stay home and then go back to school. And some children have found that particularly difficult. So that's definitely a factor for some. Not wanting to leave parents, missing out on what's going on at home, attachment issues, friendship issues, fear of failure, not wanting to be shouted at by teachers, not wanting to be late for lessons, overwhelm, trauma, being neurodivergent, and, of course, they don't know why. So that's one of the ones that we went into. So the one thing that came out of that really was When I'm there, I might like it, but I don't know why I feel the way I do. And the why, I understand why we ask the why. As a parent, I would be asking the why. As a practitioner, no, I don't want to ask the why. Because, and I probably have before, but not until I've done this training, because the why creates a barrier. Do we really need to know why? If we ask a child, because we do ask a child to help them, so we can unpick it and we can look at strategies, of course. But if the child doesn't know, the why can create a barrier between having and building a trusting relationship with a child. So we don't always need to know the why, because we can still put strategies in place, because that child we know is feeling worried and anxious, regardless of whatever reason, or if they don't know, they're still feeling those things. So the things that we listed, perhaps the child feels they're in an unsafe environment. The fact that in some secondary schools the toilets are locked and only open break and lunch. So having an issue with being worried not being able to get to the toilet in time. There's an extensive list there, but it's not a full extensive list. So they were talking about a lot of those things that we've discussed. They're an action, but it's not the internal. We're not looking at the internal if we talk about those things. So the internal is the anxiety and the worry. And that's where we look at what strategies we can do to help support a child. So we don't necessarily need to know the why. So putting that on a child can be even more demanding. So I'll give an example. I've got a friend who I saw today, no names mentioned, but they had a youth worker come and visit their child, and the youth worker said, "Why don't you want to go to school?" And the child said, "I don't know." And the youth worker said, "You must know. You must know why." And they said, "I don't know." So from my perspective, if you're having a professional coming into your home, asking and trying to build a relationship with a child, that suggests to me they haven't been EBSA trained, because they're asking the why. Now, I'm trained in drawing and talking not to ask the why. We do not ask the why when a child draws. We ask how, we ask what, we might ask where, but we don't ask why, because we're dealing with the subconscious. So this is why it all plays in really, really nicely with my training. So what we need to be doing as parents and professionals, we need to be looking at what coping strategies we can put in place. We need the child to feel heard. Now, when they were talking about it, they were saying it's okay to say to a child, "You may never like school." That's okay. There's loads of children that don't like school. You can't make them like school. We're not here to persuade. That's not going to be my job. We were talking about how EBSA is becoming more prevalent, and we were talking about how generations have shown and communicated their signs of distress. Now, one of the pictures that she put up did make me smile, because it was like an oil painting of a lady sat on like a big chaise lounge, and I'm sure you can picture it in your mind. She's fainted, and then when they faint from overwhelm, they had smelling salts put under their nose to revive them. We're not seeing that today, are we? That's not something we've seen. We've moved on. The lady on the course talks about, I think she was a bit younger than me, but she talked about knowing and there being a lot of self-harm when she was at school. And obviously that's still, that is still the case now. And thinking back to when I was at school, perhaps people were into, drugs and drink and things like that, and doing things to cope. But what is coming through now is EBSA. So what the child is communicating when they say they don't know is they don't have the words to explain, but they know they're not okay. So they're communicating the best way they can. So it's about us helping children to find the language to express themselves. Now they talked today about the human brain, how it is hardwired to worry. One of the questions they ask a child when the child comes in is, what would a caveman worry about? So they come up with a list. They do a brainstorm. Food, shelter, predators, staying with the tribe, surviving, protecting. And what is, if any of those things go wrong, what is the likely scenario? What is the likely outcome? Well, that caveman would die. Optimism wasn't a thing back then. We've moved on from that. However, our brain is still wired in the same way. We're a problem-solving machine, so anything that comes up, bringing up a difficult feeling, we feel we need to solve it as adults. With a child, if they're worrying and they're anxious, they say to the child, congratulations, you're a fully fledged human being because you're expressing all your different emotions. So you give the scenario and you say, they give a scenario and you say, yeah, I'd feel anxious in that situation too. So just hearing them and letting them say how they feel and saying that's okay. One of the things that my CEO, who was on the call, brought up was about the zones of regulation. Are they effective? So zones of regulation, I know they're used in primary, I'm not sure if they're used in secondary. And they are good for some people, but it might not be good for everybody because it's effectively sectioning off and saying these feelings are good and these feelings are bad. So happy, good, and then there's the colour, whatever that is, yellow I think. And angry is in the red, and that's bad. Of course it's not bad. It's a feeling, it's an emotion, it comes up. But sometimes a child might look at that and go, well, that's in the bad category. I'm not allowed to feel that way. I shouldn't feel that way. So what's coming up, they're pushing back down. Excuse me, turning the page, it's not very professional. So, moving on from this, the speaker was Kat Taylor. So Kat has also gone through EBSA when she was at school. She was talking about how her dad was a teacher there, which was hard enough, but she just didn't like school. She just didn't get on there. She walked out often. So she's coming at it as a professional, but also as somebody that's been through it, which is really important. So what we're looking at here is compassion-focused therapy. That's what we're talking about. So she spoke about animals having three main systems. So the first one is the threat system. The second one is the drive system. And the third one is the soothe system. The threat system, it spikes. So for us, that would be for anxiety and fear and shame. The threat system for them, a predator. Then comes adrenaline and cortisol and fight or flight. Then the drive system, so being motivated. For them, it's protection, survival, food, shelter. For us, as an adult, meeting work deadlines so we can make money, so we can buy things. So these are all activated by things going on around us. And then the soothe system. So for an animal, going along, eating grass, minding its own business, then something comes along, it's under threat, it might have to fight. So it has its threat system, it has its drive system. Once that's all over, it immediately goes back to a soothe system, as if nothing happened, because it doesn't have the same brain as a human brain. So, as an adult, if we go through the threat system and then the drive system, we have to actively engage the soothe system. Otherwise, we are stuck in threat, drive, in a vicious cycle, unless we know how to actively engage the soothe system, which then brings contentment, it releases serotonin, and we can relax. So for the animal, I'm just going to go through that again. After the threat has gone, the animal goes straight back into the soothe system. But for us as humans, our brain remembers the experience we've just had. We might imagine the future. We wonder, oh my goodness, is that going to happen again? The threat system gets bigger and bigger with all the questions we have. The soothe system gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Because if we haven't learned as humans to activate the soothe system, we are then stuck in a cycle. When we're a baby or a toddler, that's done for us. Because we fall over, parents pick us up. We need our nappy changed, we need milk, our parents will give us those things. They will soothe us, they will give us what we need, they will meet our need. As we grow, we have to learn that ourselves. It's not inbuilt because we've received it from our caregiver, from our parent. So if we don't learn our soothe system, then it shrinks and our threat system gets bigger. So we live in threat, drive. So it's no wonder, as humans, we get to the point of overwhelm. We can't exist in this space for very, very long. And for a child, they then don't feel in control. So I'm sure some of you have seen the circle of control, what we can control, what we can't control. I have one in my office, and I go through it with children to help them see. So a child will go, okay, the brain is overwhelmed and terrified. I can't fight this or run away from some of these things. So what can I fight? What can I control? Which is where we get school refusal, which is where we get staying in bed, being at home, staying with our parents, staying with our caregiver, staying in a safe place, because these are all things we can control. I'm going to leave that there for now. There's a lot more to say, and there's more on this, but I'm going to just use that as a bit of an introduction because I want to see, firstly, if anyone listens to this, and if I can have some feedback, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much if you have taken the time to listen to this. I really appreciate it, and there will be more coming. I will drip feed more information as it comes through.